Okay, so I want to start off this video by saying I've been pretty optimistic about the Kings all season long. And there's been good reasons to be optimistic. Fox and Domas are having career years, despite not being all-stars. Both of them are averaging fantastic numbers, and then obviously Domas has his double-double streak, something we've seen like five other players in the history of the NBA do. Classic non-all-star stuff right there. Keegan, as in Keegan Murray, has taken a nice leap this year. Every single stat has improved, although his efficiency has gone down, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's taking tougher shots this year. But offense aside, the real major improvement he's had is on the defensive side of the ball. All of a sudden, in year two, he's one of the best defenders in the league. So that's been huge. And then, of course, you can't talk about, good things involving the Kings without mentioning Malik Monk, who is still doing Malik Monk things, leading the league in points off the bench and assists off the bench, and he actually just set the franchise record for most assists off the bench in a single season in Kings history. But with all that said, the Kings are only 8th in the West. Now, they are only one game back of the 5 seed, but beating out the Suns, Mavs, and Pelicans, not to mention the Kings also have the Lakers and Warriors creeping up on them. Needless to say, that this is going to be a really tough last 24 games. The Suns do have the toughest schedule remaining, but the Kings, at least according to opponents' win percentage, have a tougher schedule than pretty much every other Western Conference playoff team. We do, however, have the most home games remaining in the entire league, which, makes sense because we've pretty much been on the road this entire calendar year. But, we can talk all about the schedule and matchups and who the Kings need to beat and all that stuff, but does it even really matter? Is there even a point? We lose to Charlotte at home and then beat the Clippers on the road. We beat Detroit on the road and then lose to Detroit at home. We come back down 24 to beat the Warriors and then blow a 22-point fourth quarter lead to the Suns. The Kings beat good teams, the Kings lose to good teams. The Kings get beat by bad teams, the Kings beat bad teams. There's no rhyme or reason to this team at all. You never know what to expect. Although I think we've all come to expect the unexpected. And I think we all knew that after the Kings beat the Clippers the other night, the Kings were for sure going to lose to the severely undermanned Heat at home the next night. And that's been a really sad but consistent theme this year. Losing to teams when their best player or players are not playing. That's been consistent. Perhaps the one consistent thing, aside from Sabonis recording a double double, that you can count on from this Kings team. And this is the biggest difference between the Kings this year and the Kings last year. Yes, we had the same record, literally the same exact record. And yes, we pretty much have the same exact roster. And yes, we are arguably better than last year. At least our four best players are better this year than they were last year. But the biggest difference is we are extremely, extremely inconsistent. You don't know what Kings team is going to show up on any given night. Is it the team that has shown signs that they can compete with anybody? Or is it the team that loses to the absolute worst teams in the entire league at home? Those are essentially the two identities the Kings have this year. And even if one shows up for the first three quarters, the other one might tap in the fourth, and you're left wondering, where the hell did that come from? And no, I'm not just referring to the Suns game where we blew the biggest fourth quarter lead of all time or whatever, even though I definitely am referencing that a bit. But even the other night against Miami, we don't show up for the first three quarters, and then all of a sudden in the fourth, we say, all right, time to step it up. But by that time, it's too late. I don't think we've won a single game all year where we're going into it as fans thinking, okay, the Kings should win this game pretty comfortably. Not only do they not win comfortably, they just don't win at all. Whether it's tanking teams, teams playing on the second night of a back to back, a team is missing their three best players, nothing is easy for this team. And I don't know if that's a coaching thing or if this is on the players, but whatever it is, it needs to change because there's no way this Kings team is making it out of the first round or maybe even the play-in if this keeps up. Not to mention, the Kings are also the worst free throw shooting team in the entire league, which will absolutely murder them in the playoffs. And we also have the worst three-point defense in the league, which I don't know if you've noticed, but teams shoot a lot of threes these days. Now, there is something that Mike Brown said during the All-Star break that might be a reason to be optimistic. Basically, Mike mentioned that if the Kings were just average at the free throw line and in terms of three-point defense, we'd be a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. And that's according to offensive rating and defensive rating. Top 10 in both. If you look at what historically qualifies a team as a true contender, they got to have a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. So if the Kings can fix those two issues, I think they could definitely be a top 4 or 5 team in the West. But that's a very big if because, through 4 games since the All Star break, they haven't really shown any signs of improvement. In fact, in the last 2 games, they shot 58% from the free throw line against Miami and 61% against Denver. Horrible, terrible, not conducive to winning at all. And honestly, I think that's the one thing you can point to when making the argument that the Kings are not legit. I mean, you just cannot be last in the league at the free throw line. They are literally free points. You cannot be the worst at getting free points in the NBA. And you definitely can't expect to win a playoff series in an extremely tough Western Conference. Are there reasons to be optimistic? Yes. Domas and Fox could very well be an All NBA this year. Keegan Murray is developing into a premier defender, and his ceiling is really just up to him. If he wants to be the next Klay Thompson or Kawhi Leonard, I'm not going to be the one to tell him he can't. And Malik Monk is still top tier entertainment. Not to mention, we have the reigning Coach of the Year and Executive of the Year. But, given all of that, we are still just the 8th seed. The rest of the West is really good. I can't overstate that enough. But we're probably the most inconsistent team in the NBA. And if we can be consistently good these last 24 games, then yeah, maybe we get lucky. Maybe we avoid the play-in and get a good winnable matchup in round one. But as of right now, there's just no evidence that this team will turn things around and be the team that we know they can be when it matters most. I'm not giving up on the Kings. I'm just starting to realize that it's probably going to take a miracle for the Kings to make it past the first round. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not the end of the world, but in the short term, it kind of sucks.